Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Bold Blind Beauty Up in the Air webinar session. I'm a 62-year-old medium brown skinned Black woman with an edgy golden blonde pixie hairstyle, and I'm wearing a black V-neck tee with a pink Bold Blind Beauty logo. My name is Stephanie McCoy, and I'm the founder of Bold Blind Beauty. In recognition of International Women's Day, we are thrilled to present 3 dynamic women panelists who will be sharing their thoughts about how employable am I? 3 keys to success. First key, the honest self-assessment. This session is being recorded with captions on for inclusivity, and it will be uploaded to YouTube. All registrants will receive a free resource guide by email following the webinar. We will also send out a survey before the end of the week to collect input from you for future webinar events. I'm now going to turn the mic over to Dana Hennett and Matthew Cho to go over some housekeeping tips to ensure everyone has an enjoyable experience. Then our moderator for the evening, Jason Perry, will take it from there. Dana?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Steph. My name is Dana Hennett. I am the beauty editor with Bold Blind Beauty. And I'm just going to go over a couple of rules, and then I'm going to toss it to Matthew. So anyone who is not a panelist, we're asking you to stay on mute and keep your cameras off. So the only ones that should be on camera are the panelists, and just to be respectful, just to keep on mute. And Matthew, I'm going to toss it over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew, and I am the intern for Bold Blind Beauty. Also, to add on to Dana, any questions, please put it into the chat, and we will have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. And lastly, please note that the webinar will be recorded. So we're also going to be uploading it to YouTube, so you can always check it out later. Hope you enjoy.
Jason, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Perry. I'm going to be the moderator for this presentation. I'm so happy to be here this evening. I sense a lot of enthusiasm and energy, and I would be remiss if I didn't wish everybody a happy International Women's Day. This is really an important day because we celebrate the contributions of women and girls around the world. And speaking of that, we just lost a disability rights icon a few days ago, Judy Heumann, who is widely regarded as the mother of the disability rights movement. Judy Heumann passed just a few days ago. I had the opportunity to meet her while I was in college, and it was definitely a life-changing experience for me. So Judy was born in 1947. She contracted polio in 1949 at age 2. Back in 1949, it was the status quo to institutionalize people with disabilities. Judy and her family really fought against that. Judy became a civil rights leader in the 1960s and 70s. I think she actually became the first teacher in New York State to use a wheelchair, and she led a number of protests to get disability rights legislation passed in the 1970s. So God rest your soul, Judy Heumann. So I'm going to be joined by 3 very knowledgeable people to help me out with this today. We're trying to give you the broadest perspective possible for employment issues. And one of our panelists is Sylvia Stinson Perez. She's a person with hiring experience. We have Jennifer Wenzel, who is somebody currently employed, and Yokasta Urena, who is somebody currently looking for work. Would each person like to briefly introduce themselves?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sylvia Stinson Perez. It's a pleasure to be here. And I've been an employer of people for a long, long time. I'm not giving my age like Steph did, but I'm very happy to be here with all of you and really excited to share hopefully some good insights. Jennifer?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Wenzel. I am currently the HR generalist at a company called Beyond Vision. I've been working at Beyond Vision since 2021, January of 2021. I started as their talent acquisition coordinator. I've been employed in other roles throughout my time, and I'm happy to be here and appreciate the opportunity to share some information with all of you. So thank you so much. Costa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yokasta Irina. I'm a teacher for the blind and visually impaired. I'm visually impaired as well, and I'm making the transition from teacher to adjunct professor and possibly research. So I'm currently on the job market.
Wow, really impressive credentials, Yokasta. And if I didn't mention it before, I am totally blind. I'm a general practice attorney. I have been for almost 16 years. And as my secondary occupation, I'm a job placement specialist and job developer for people with disabilities, getting people into professional type positions. So I look forward to a very stimulating discussion this evening. You know, doing this really brings me back to my college days. I can remember getting to campus about a month early because I wanted to learn the ropes. I had just gotten a new guide dog. And I got a call a few days later from financial aid saying that they couldn't cover the additional month on my housing. And I was going to be billed for that. So I was thrown right into the process of needing to look for work immediately because I had bills to pay. On top of that, my guide dog chewed up a seat cushion in a taxi cab, which I was also billed for, wasn't anticipating that. And things just cost a lot more than I was anticipating when I went into college. Don't get me wrong, I had money for all the essentials, but I wanted to live a little bit. And of course, I had these extra bills that I didn't anticipate. So I was really forced into finding work in order to make ends meet. I started diving right in head first. I started looking at classified ads, and I saw all these different jobs being advertised, you know, hundreds of jobs, maybe even thousands of different jobs. The advertisements were talking about people performing the job duties in different kinds of settings. They were talking about needing people who could work with people from all walks of life, who were proficient in different kinds of technologies and digital products, people who could work from home or remotely or telework, people who could adjust to rapid rules and regulation changes. And I was just really dizzied and dismayed by all of it. I really had no idea where to turn. I felt lost and a little bit hopeless. And for me, feeling hopeless is saying something because I'm a pretty upbeat, optimistic person in most cases. So I started reaching out to different people within my support network. I had made contact with a college professor who was a visually impaired person. A low vision, I think, would be the best descriptor for him. And he advised me that there were models that blind people could follow to be successful. And I said, Professor Jenkins, whatever do you mean by a model? And he advised me that I needed to be purposeful, intentional, and coordinated. So our conversation sort of drifted, and I walked out of there feeling, well, you know, that's a little high-minded and academic, but it was still helpful because it told me that I needed to do something and I needed to know something. So I reached out beyond that to my academic advisor at the time, you know, the person that helps me choose a major and select what classes to take and so forth. And he advised me that it's really a madhouse out there when it comes to finding work and choosing a major, and that I needed a method to get past the madness. And I said, Doug, whatever do you mean by a method? And he said, well, we have this Marvel fan club on campus where new members have to choose a nickname for themselves, and they combine some kind of ailment with some kind of fruit or vegetable and the name of a famous politician, and that's their name. He said, that's a method. And I walked out of there thinking, that's helpful, but I don't know how this really fits into finding work. You know, whatever am I going to do? How am I going to use this? And so I reached out to another person that I knew and respected at the time, my rehab counselor with the state agency. And she advised me that what I needed was a system. And I said, Janet, whatever is a system? You know, what are we talking about here? And she said, well, you know that thing that you did with your orientation specialist when you got on campus to learn how to cross a difficult intersection across from your dorm to get to the grocery store? And she recited the steps to me. She said, you know, you square up against a telephone pole, you take 3 steps forward, you make a 90-degree turn to the right, and then you wait for the westbound parallel surge. That's what your mobility report says. She said, that's what I'm talking about when I say you need a system. And I had this aha moment of, oh, these 3 people are basically saying the same thing. You know, whether we're talking about models, methods, or system, what I really need here is a step-by-step approach, a method, a system, a model that I can break things down into digestible chunks and achieve things in a proper order. That just kind of came to me. And you know, my counselor said she was proud of me for coming to that realization. It was one of those, you know, sort of life-changing moments. And I really became fascinated at that point by how things were done, the sequencing and the proper order of things. And it led me to really develop a step-by-step approach for use for myself, looking for an internship or a co-op that I could use to help make ends meet. And one of the things that I figured out was, well, step 1 has to be, how do I know what I can do? I have to get to know myself somehow, right? And that's really the foundation for everything, getting to know ourselves in terms of what we are and who we are and what we can do, and getting comfortable with that. And so that's really the first key, would be an honest self-assessment. And the second key to success would be finding work or getting hired. And then the third key would be actually keeping the job or moving up the career ladder. So it's really interesting how I was able to develop the model that we're going to be using here over a period of years. And I've used it successfully with not only finding myself employment and carving out a career path, but also to help other people get placed into jobs that they find satisfying. You know, one of the most daunting statistics that I've seen recently is that one job offer on average is tendered for every 1,500 resumes submitted. So sending out 1,499 resumes does you no good on average. It takes, you know, the 1,500th before you get some kind of tangible job offer. Another stat that I found really daunting and sort of surprising was that if you look at everybody who's working, whether they have a disability or they don't, about 3 in every 10 are dissatisfied with the work they're currently doing and are looking for other work. And I think one of the big reasons for both of these statistics is that not enough work is done on this first part, which is going to be the focus of this presentation, the honest self-assessment. When we're talking about keys to success, it's really important to remember that you could write a book on each one of these, maybe multiple books. Each of these topics is really meaty, you know, assessment, getting hired, and then being able to keep your job or move up the career ladder. So I wanted to focus on the honest self-assessment today. And one of the things I think is really important is to look at what honesty really means. It means, in my view, to conform our words to reality and to be clear about the things that we can do, we can't do, and so forth. When you talk about assessments, there are really formal assessments that can be used, and there are informal assessments. Some assessments are paid, some are free, some are administered online, and some have to be administered by professionals with specific qualifications. The focus of what I want to do here today is more on the informal, the soul searching aspect of assessment, and that's by design. I recommend that if you do any of the formal assessments, that you do so at a career office with your rehab counselor or a trained professional. And the reason for that is that there are so many fakes that are hard to differentiate from the real thing. It's not necessarily that people are trying to rip you off, but if you happen to stumble upon a fake, the instrument isn't validated. It may not be measuring what it claims to be measuring. And when you're talking about choosing a job or a career path, that is a really crucial decision that we simply cannot leave to chance. We have to make sure that the information we're getting is good. So if you're going to use one of the established instruments, I recommend doing that with a qualified professional. So let's really get into the meat of what our topic is today, and that's the informal type of assessment. Regardless whether we use one of the established tools or whether we're trying to do the informal assessment on our own, assessments really focus on some key elements. One of those elements is our values, figuring out what's most important to us. For me, some of my values include treating people with equal dignity and respect. It's really important to me that we treat people with equal worth. Another element is our interests, what we enjoy doing. Personality type assessments, they look at our attitudes and behaviors. And then finally, we have aptitudes, which are things we're good at, things we do and do well. Some people call them skills. And aptitudes can be looked at as either hard skills, which are technical competences, things like computer proficiency, speed reading, and also soft skills, which are really people skills and social skills. Of the two types of skills, I think the soft skills are at least as important as the hard skills. And so it's really important to think about what soft skills you have and what hard skills you have, and be able to look at what you can do and do well, and to be honest about that. Make sure that your words conform to reality. I think it's a good time to bring in our panelists here for the informal assessment type to discuss some of their experiences. And this is one question I would just put to all of our panelists, to Sylvia, to Jennifer, and to Yokasta. And that is, have any of you used any kind of formal or informal assessments?
This is Sylvia, and I have been more with mentors, not during a hiring process though. So, yeah.
This is Jennifer, and I have used both the informal with friends and family and just myself listing as I was looking for work. Like you said, the values that were important to me, the soft skills I had to bring to the table, sometimes even while looking at different job postings. I've also used a couple of formal assessments with Indeed, with varying success with accessibility on those.
Yeah, one of the formal assessments that I really found helpful back in my college days was the Myers-Briggs type indicator.
I've done that as well. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, and the Holland code, that's a very good one as well. The Keirsey temperament sorter is also really helpful. But again, we're getting into the area where these are formal, and there's a lot of fakes that are really hard to tell from the real thing. So that's why I was recommending that if you're going to do a formal type of assessment, that's really important. They can provide a lot of information, but I would do those.
I would also add that in addition to really evaluating or assessing your values, interests, skills, etc., I think it's really important to really assess your blindness capabilities as well. That is critical. And I've seen over and over that people don't have those skills that really is preventing them from accessing employment. So your ability to travel independently and get around, get to work, move around the space at work very independently and safely. Real ability to use technology, not just, oh, can you use technology? Yeah, but then can you really use all of the different programs that are necessary? And so those kind of types of skills, can you take notes? Can you participate fully in a meeting, et cetera? Those are really important things to not let pass in that assessment.
And those are hard skills.
They are.
They're difficult to acquire, and they're also really tangible types of skills that are necessary. I know when I started college, we didn't have Uber and Lyft, and paratransit was very shaky. And so the only choice I had was to learn how to get around, with a public bus, and to how to cross different types of intersections. We didn't have sophisticated GPS technologies. And so I learned how to use landmarks. And another part of this really factors into organization. How do you, as someone who is blind or low vision, I know for the first time when I got to college, I was on my own. I had to figure out how to organize my possessions. My family had done all those things when I was in high school.
And also, Jason, this is Yocasta. I just wanted to add to something that Sylvia said, which I think is really important. I'm a special education teacher, and I tell parents all the time that their child's IEP or their child's education plan is a work in progress. It's the same thing for us as visually impaired or blind people. We have to be willing to assess our own skills every year, I would say. What was good for me 5 years ago isn't good for me anymore.
Yep.
I'm honest with myself, right? I'm a visual learner, but I'm slowly starting to lose my vision. If I'm going to get into research is reading heavy. I have to work on my technology skills. And no one is going to tell me that. I can ace the interview, right? But when the rubber meets the road and I have to perform the job, will I be able to perform the job? So I really love Sylvia's point.
Yeah, it's a really shrewd point. And, it kind of reminds me of something that Margaret Thatcher once said, that you may have to fight a battle more than once to win it. And if you just look at what many people have to do job hunting, an average of 5 to 8 times in their lives. And so the need to continuously assess is really important.
And you may have to have backup plans and know several types of technology. Many people rely on their phone, and that can work to some extent. But when you're in the work world, you're going to need the PC. You're going to need things like Word and PowerPoint and Excel and more powerful tools. But your phone can still be a backup for things like Zoom. If suddenly your computer's not working and you need to hop on a meeting for Zoom, you should have that flexibility and that knowledge where you can jump from one thing to another. Or maybe you have a braille display that you can hook to your computer or to use, and maybe that's a good note taker. But if you need to produce your notes in a way that someone else can use, you might need to have the capability to transfer those notes. So you always have to be looking. I like Yocasta's point about being able to continually assess, because your braille and speak that you might have had in 1990 isn't going to work the same as your display that you have now. And so you have to be willing to be flexible and change and continue to evolve with technology.
A lifelong learner.
Yes.
Yeah, yep. And that's so important. I remember being in high school and having to carry my books in a wheelbarrow, being assigned multiple lockers. I think I had like a whole row of lockers, something like 5 or 6 lockers, because I had so many braille books, volume upon volume. And then I would have to take books to different classes and home to do homework. And, I always had to have a wheelbarrow, basically to carry, or a small cart, because it was just so much to carry around. I had to carry a braille writer. If you've ever seen a Perkins braille writer, they're not light.
Nope.
And I remember winning a braille and speak when I was in college, my freshman year. I was in a braille reading contest and I won because, you know, I've always found braille to be really helpful. And the research bears that out. You know, people, blind or visually impaired people who use braille or a large print have some way to read other than audio are much more likely to get employed.
I have my Braille notes for tonight right here.
I'm a huge proponent of Braille.
I think it's also demystifying this idea that if we reassess, and for example, in my case, I read large print, I'm slowly making a transition to audio and braille, that's in some way a negative thing. Like, I think we have to, as a community, see it as another gained skill. You know, see it as something that's, oh my God, you know, now I have to move to braille. Wonderful. I get to learn another language.
Yeah, I think that's
So
a
somebody
really
put in the chat box, tools in the toolbox.
Yes.
And you have to have a giant toolbox.
Yes.
You
And
have to have a
keep
giant
being-
toolbox.
You have to keep being willing to add tools to that toolbox. And yes, look at them as positive things that you're gaining.
I remember being in law school. I was doing moot court at the time, and somebody remarked to me that they could live in my world anytime they wanted by putting a blindfold on, but I could never live in their world as a seeing person. And I thought, I'm functioning in a seeing world now. What planet are you living on, friend? Yeah, but loss is, whether it's pleasant or not, it is a natural part of the order of things. And life is about gains and losses, and blindness or vision loss is just another card in the deck, and it depends on how you play it.
Someone had a really important question in the chat box about when to make the transition from large print to braille. And I can tell a really quick story. I was using Zoom text for a little while, not long, probably a couple, 3 years. And I needed to move to 3X. And I realized moving to even 3X, I was not as efficient. I was missing things. I wasn't reading everything. And so that's when I decided to start using JAWS and to start learning Braille. So I used speech and Braille for many years when I could still read print. It's all about your level of efficiency. Can you read as fast as I guess, I don't know if would I say, could you read as fast as someone who's sighted with whatever level of magnification you're using? Because with Braille, I can. With speech, I can read 10 times faster.
Yeah, when you can see 1 or 2 letters at a time, it's time to make the transition. Is what I hear you saying there.
Well, it was way more than, I mean, it was more than that. I could still see a fair amount, but it was not efficient.
I think Sylvia, I think you touched on the key word there, which is efficiency, right? Like in my case, I cannot at this time take time to learning Braille because I'm in the middle of a dissertation and I have to get it done, but I can start moving in that direction. So I can start by using more voiceover, starting to get familiar with JAWS, get familiar with Zoom text. I can move into the Braille if I survive and I don't jump off a building during this dissertation. I can move into Braille then. But I think making realistic changes that you can really implement on a daily basis. And I can do small things with Braille. For example, I can start Brailing my medicines. Do Braille around the house.
You can put Braille clothing tags to organize your different color clothing.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's all about making it functional and using it in small ways and continuing.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of talking about hard skills, which is really important. But Sylvia, I wanted to ask you, as a person with hiring experience, what are some of the soft skills that you look for in people that you hire?
Well, definitely, I would say that the soft skills that I'm looking for are that people actually know something about the organization and they know about the job, because that demonstrates that they're interested in what the job is, that they're curious, that they're actually a person who will go and find out stuff. The next one I would say is really good social skills, interpersonal skills. The second thing beyond technical skills that any employer is looking for is, will you fit in their organization? Will you be able to get along? Will you be able to work on that team that they have? So that social skills, interpersonal skills, really important. Problem solving skills, which, you know, most of us with visual impairments have in spades, but not everyone does. So I think that, and then I'm going to just throw one in because I think this is really important. When someone comes to an interview or even just to get an application, appropriately dressed and having the right demeanor. So for many years when I was hiring people, I could not see, and my receptionist in my office knew, literally, I'm going to come to you after this person leaves so you can tell me how they were dressed, because that really, and I actually had someone who showed up one time for an orientation and mobility position in shorts and a tank top. They were not hired. And you need to be appropriately dressed and appropriately groomed. And when I say demeanor, it's, you know, you need to have the right language, the right attitude. You need to really treat the person you're interviewing with the right level of respect, not like they're your buddy. That can, you know, as you're part of that team, you know, you might dress a little more casually, etc. But when you go for that interview, you need to make sure you're top notch. So I think those are some really key things. There's really a long list, but I think those are some really key things and I say those because those are often the things people don't get right.
So Sylvia, what I hear you saying is that oftentimes there's one vacancy that you're trying to fill, one or two vacancies, have a lot of applicants. I had cited stats before. On average, it takes about 1,500 resumes to tender a single job offer. I mean, that's on average. I mean, some people get, you know, a job sooner than 1,500 resumes. But the point is, you're going to be competing against a lot of people, and you as the hiring manager, you have to screen some people out so you can get to the people that meet the qualifications. And so in order to screen people out, you look at the soft skills, and really the soft skills that I heard you talking about, the word that I kept coming up with was work ethic. Are you an honest person? Are you somebody who's dependable, going to be there, somebody that can work as part of a team? Are you going to be kind and courteous to other people? Or are you going to follow the company's dress code and just be an all-around good person to have in the workplace, a problem solver? Right. That's really,
and the interpersonal skills. Yes.
Yeah. And I think those are all really good points, because as an attorney, I hire people all the time, people to help me with reading. And I also have 3 employees in my law practice. And of course, sometimes I hire temporary staff, private investigators, people to help me serve my papers and so forth. And I look for a lot of those same qualities in people. So I think that's a really shrewd observation type. So Jennifer, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, how did you go about finding your job?
Well, I was actually looking this time from a position of strength. I had a job, but was looking to change, partly because I wanted to change states. I wanted to move. And partly because I was wanting a new challenge. And so I was looking in a lot of different ways. I used Indeed, I used LinkedIn, I used a jobs list, the NFB jobs listserv. I was looking at different jobs that were available. I was listening, I had let some friends and family know I was looking, so people were, telling me about openings. But the job that I got through a friend of mine who told, well, an acquaintance of mine who told me that a job that she was doing was going to be open because she was getting promoted. And she described what she was doing as a talent acquisition coordinator. And I got very excited because I was doing admissions at a blindness rehab center. So I thought that admissions might transfer really well to talent acquisition. And so as soon as that job came open, she reminded me that it was open and I applied. I still had to go through the same process that any other candidate would go through, but it did help to have that in because I knew her, I knew a little bit more about the job. But I still took the interview process and the job application process extremely seriously. And later, the person who's now my boss told me that that was one of the reasons he continued to look at me, because I didn't act like, oh, well, I know this person. Of course I'm hired. This is a shoo-in thing. I was very professional during the interview. I was very dressed well, and I ended up doing everything virtually. So my point to people, everything Sylvia said about being dressed professionally, your interpersonal skills, your soft skills, that's all important in the virtual world too. If you come
Yes,
to
it
a
is.
virtual interview dressed in pajamas and act like you don't care to be there and are yawning and eating and just acting like you're just sitting at home hanging out and you've got your TV blaring in the background, you're not in the professional interview world. You need to be really, and that means too, I was really polite and professional to the person who opened the meeting, who was the administrative assistant. I
Yes.
treated everybody the same way. And I always do that. And I think that's important too, because if you're a jerk to the maintenance person walking in, but then you're sweet as pie to the boss, that's not a person that is consistently honest and interpersonal, everything.
So Jennifer, I'm really taking 2 points away from your comments here, which I think are really well-founded. The first thing I'm taking away is the concept of a hidden job market. And a lot of good jobs are not advertised in the classifieds or on bulletin boards. They're kept in-house. And the way you get to those jobs is through networking.
Absolutely.
So, and the second takeaway that I heard you saying there was that how a person goes about looking for work and how they would go about doing their jobs are really looked at as kind of one and the same thing by a lot of employers.
This is Sylvia, and I've had 7 professional jobs in my career. I've had 7 professional jobs. I've only truly interviewed for one of those. Every single one, including the entry one I started at, really were from connections. And I mean, I'd still have to go through the process of filling out the application, but actually many of them I didn't even interview for.
I placed 32 people in professional level jobs last year. All these people were blind, low vision, or visually impaired. And of those 32 placements, I think 23 or 24 were actually through networking. They were for jobs that were not advertised. We were actually able to convince the employer that, hey, they should create a job for this person. Or we learned about, somebody being promoted, moving up the ladder and creating a job opening. The job wasn't actually advertised.
Well, and promotions are so important too. The job I have now, I got because the person who was doing the job left to go to law school, and she told me she was leaving, and I went to my boss and pitched that I wanted the promotion and I thought I could do this job. And so that's important too, to pay attention. If you're working, pay attention to those opportunities and don't be afraid to challenge yourself if you think that you're the person who's the best fit for that promotion.
And another question, and this could really go to Jennifer or Yocasta, what kinds of challenges have you encountered while looking for work?
Well, I'll say for me, the challenge is that when you're mid-level career or have moved up in your field, you qualify to do a lot of things. So it goes back to your initial question, Jason, about the soul searching. one of my biggest challenges is, what do I want to do now? And focus my attention on looking for those types of opportunities and thinking about the skills that I will need or need to have to do the job successfully. That can be a challenge, I think, for people, because, you know, as people who are blind or visually impaired, we shouldn't just take a job because it's a job and it's being offered. You have to ask yourself, do you want to do that job? Is that in your career path? So weaning out those unnecessary job applications is challenging for me.
How about completing the application process? I find that a lot of applications are really not JAWS friendly or screen reader friendly.
I had some challenges with that. I was trying to apply for some state positions for Minnesota, and their system was not easy to use. I actually used I.R to help with some of that. Or I would get most of the way through an application and I was doing great, and then there'd be a button to submit, and that button wouldn't work.
Oh, that's the worst, when everything's accessible and then the
Yes.
submit button doesn't work. It's like, I've done
Yeah.
all that work for nothing.
So I'd have to, run and ask my son. I'm like, hey, just come push this button for me, please, so I can, because I've worked, for an hour on this beautiful application. So that can be a challenge. And the challenge can be just getting a chance to get that interview. And then once you get that interview, I interviewed for a position and I really thought I could do the job, and I was really excited about the job, and I had 3 interviews. So I was really, really excited because I was in the final round. And each time they had asked me about using database software, and I hadn't used it before. And I kept saying, I'm really willing to learn. I haven't used this software, but I'm really excited to learn it. And the 2 interviews, they acted as if, oh, well, that's not a big deal. We can teach you that. And I said, I've got people skills. You can teach me the software and I'll put in extra time. The 3rd round, they asked me about it. And as soon as I said I hadn't used it, it was like all the warm air went out of that room. And they were just like, oh. And it was pretty much over after that. And it was really frustrating because I know I could have learned it. I could have tried. I think it might have worked with JAWS, and I think I could have done a lot of workarounds, but I didn't even get that chance.
I remember in college, I was applying to be an insurance salesman, and we didn't have digital applications in those days. And the application was so small that I couldn't really type on it. And of course, I couldn't handwrite that small. And I wound up being so desperate because I really didn't want to share personal information with my classmates and get help filling it out. So I called the employer and explained to him what the situation was. And I proposed that, I just sort of write up everything that would traditionally be in a job application and get it notarized and then just send that to them. And they actually accepted that and hired me.
Wow.
Yeah. And they told me after they had hired me that they're like, we were just so impressed with, you being so proactive,
Problem
and
solving.
problem solving. Yeah. Problem solving,
Comes all back
creativity.
to that.
Yep. And it didn't hurt that I had a college professor recommending me as well. So it goes back to the networking. Matthew, would you like to tell us how you went about finding your internship with Bold Blind Beauty and if you faced any challenges?
Yeah, sure. So it began kind of with someone at my school. So I had a guidance counselor at school who kind of introduced me to someone from this program at City Access. The person from City Access, his name was Jonathan Marin, and he was like, oh, what are your interests? He told me, he was like, well, you might want to like improve your hard skills and soft skills, like being able to communicate with different people and also being able to like learn how to work on, things like Word, Excel, how to kind of just really like anything. And I'm really thankful that he introduced me to Bold Blind Beauty because already it's only been 3 weeks and I've learned so many things.
So Matthew, one of the things I hear you saying is that it's really important for a person who is blind, really anybody, but
Yeah.
especially for somebody who is blind or has some disability, to acquire all the skills they can.
Definitely. Yeah, it's, it's very important. You have to have your tool belt with a bunch of tools that when an obstacle comes your way, you gotta use a different tool.
Folks, I think this has been a tremendous event. I've really enjoyed moderating it. I think we've gotten a lot of good information. I know I've learned a lot of things that I'll be able to apply to my work. And I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity. And I'm reminded of something that Rosa Parks, who was a great civil rights leader here in the US back in the 1950s and 1960s. She said that we should never fear what we are doing if it is right, and that we should live our lives as a model for other people. And that's what I've tried to do in my work, to give other blind people and people with other disabilities an opportunity. Because whether we like it or not, society tends to judge people who are blind or otherwise having disabilities by the worst skilled among us. All blind people are judged by one. That's what one of my mentors said. And so, it's really important to be kind and courteous to people, to put your best foot forward at all times. Remember, we've discussed here in this presentation only the first key to success, which is to honestly assess, the honest self-assessment. You can go about that in the informal ways we've talked about, which I highly recommend. And if you have the opportunity to do some of the more formal instruments, that could also be helpful. I think it's time for questions and answers.
There's a really good question that came up in the chat. Somebody was asking if there are ways to present your blindness or visual impairment as a positive attribute during an interview. And I have one, well, actually two. I talk about it as, I go back to that problem solving creativity and talk about how being a blind person has made me a good problem solver, a more flexible person, more creative, adaptable person. I was applying for a job where diversity was important. And I'm a white woman who grew up in a very small town. So I don't know that I'm particularly diverse in a lot of ways, but I spun it that I'm a blind person, and that makes me part of a diverse blindness community. And so I felt like that was making it more of a positive attribute there.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with that spin. It's not only positive, but it's accurate. If you look at the contributions that people who are blind have made over the years, we actually lead society in a lot of ways. I mean, look at the audiobook, for instance. We pioneered that back in the 1930s, and fast forward to the 1990s and into the present, and now it's commercialized. Everybody's using audiobooks. Email.
Another thing I would add about presenting yourself as a person with a visual impairment is the more confident you are in yourself, the more comfortable and confident the potential employer will be in you as well.
Absolutely.
So if you question your own abilities, and I'm not saying to make up things or to act like I know everything, I know how to do everything, but you've got to have clear answers of, what you've got to solidly know that you have the technical skills and demonstrate the soft skills in a very positive, confident way.
And increasingly, job interviews are focused on demonstrating the hard skills as well.
Yes.
But I also say to my transition age students, so this goes really well for Matthew and crew. You have to sell yourself, your skills. What have you done that has brought you to that interview? When I interview for jobs, I talk about my accomplishments as a person. What are my licenses? What are my degrees? What am I working towards? And then I weave in my visual impairment.
Yes, absolutely. I don't make it the focus of who I am. I make it a part of who I am. I agree with you, Costa. I want to concentrate on all the things I've done and then just weave it in casually as a part of it to show that it's, I'm comfortable with it, but it's not my only thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think these are really good comments, because if you step into a job interview, whether it's in person or virtual, from my experience, blindness or low vision, if it's obvious, tends to be the elephant in the room. And if you can't put the employer at ease, if you're not sold on yourself, you're not going to get hired. I mean,
Confidence in those interpersonal skills, demonstrating that you are just a person. I wanted to say something to those who maybe don't have a lot of work experience as well, because you need those technical skills, and the only way to get technical skills is to have experience. And I think too many people underestimate the importance of and the use of volunteering, internships, apprenticeships, etc.
co-ops, practicums.
Volunteering is critical. I mean, I've spent my whole life on the side doing tons of volunteer work, and it's been a great way to develop a lot of those other skills, those even technical skills, even mobility skills, because I'm really putting myself into volunteer roles where I have to stretch myself. And I've continued to do that my entire career. And so, especially when you have little to no work experience, you need to treat volunteer like a full-time job, in all honesty.
Well, and Sylvia, finding a job is itself a full-time job.
It is.
Now, if you go back to the stats, the 1,500 resumes being sent out to get one job offer, I mean, it takes a while to send out 1,500 resumes.
Oh, yes, Jason. I am working full time.
Yep, absolutely. And that's important, because you have to be in the mindset that this is your job, and that, maybe you get up and get dressed up every day just in case you get a phone screen or you get an interview opportunity. You're ready to jump on it, because you're treating that job search as a very serious job.
Yeah, and you've got to be ready to look for work at any time. And you may be sitting in a restaurant and get in a conversation with somebody who happens to mention a job opening.
Yep.
And also be ready to volunteer, going back to Sylvia's point, at any point in your career. I have a very full experience in research. So if someone wants to bring me on as a research assistant and pay me close to nothing, I'm good with that, because I need the experience.
Absolutely.
So,
and they can be a reference for you.
Yes.
Another thing I'll also point out is that it's very disappointing when you go through, like Jennifer mentioned, the whole three stages, and then she didn't get the job. Those things, when you don't get a job, you don't get a call back, you don't even get acknowledgement of a resume that you submitted, that can be super disappointing. And I think too often people take it personally. And I think all of us would say, we've interviewed for tons of jobs that we didn't get. And like you said, there's 1,500, you're competing against a lot of people. And it's not about you, usually, when you don't get the job. There's just a person who's a better fit, a better candidate. Now, unfortunately, we know that the blindness thing does play a role in there, but keep trying, keep interviewing, keep putting those resumes out there. Don't get discouraged.
Yep. And take each interview as an experience. Learn from practice, feel better, more comfortable, more confident. And it may be a blindness thing. It may not be a blindness thing. Sometimes it's a team fit thing. Sometimes, there's so many things. So don't get angry and get a chip on your shoulder and bitter because, I'm blind, nobody's ever going to hire me. Just keep trying.
What I like to add is, what I usually do, I try to use my blindness as so that it makes me stand out. What I try to do is, when I go, let's say to try for an internship, I say, oh, well, here are my skills, and they expect me, oh, this kid can't do anything. What is he even doing here, trying out? But I use that to my advantage. When they see the skills that I have, when they see the things that I did, they're like, oh wow, this is amazing. I didn't expect that. So you could really use the blindness thing as an advantage. Don't let it go to waste,
Yeah, I think blindness is just another card in the deck. Vision loss is just another card in the deck, and we can play them into assets or we can play them into limitations. Just a practical example. I remember doing an internship with an equal opportunity investigator. I think this was 2001 or 2002. It's been, I'm dating myself a bit, but at that time they were trying to go paperless. Now, people who were blind or visually impaired, we had been paperless for 8 to 10 years, and so we were able to help them identify what the problems were going to be with going paperless. They all thought I was a genius for being able to anticipate that, oh my goodness, you're going to have systems crashes and people aren't going to be able to get access to the phone book. But in fact, I'd had that problem myself going paperless and figured out ways around it. So being blind in many ways or being visually impaired in many ways requires you to be a pioneer. And that can be a real advantage to an organization. And one of the reasons that gives me hope is I've seen, especially in the last 5 years, I've seen just a markedly more positive attitude toward hiring people with disabilities. I started surveying people back in the 1990s when I was in college. And at that time, the vast majority of hiring managers admitted to me in confidence that if they had any inclination that somebody had a significant disability, they just throw their application in the garbage because they didn't want to have to deal with it. And when I say a significant majority, I mean, this is like 75, 80%. I've seen that number go steadily down as I've done these surveys every couple of years after that. We're still not where we need to be, but we're getting a lot closer. It is invigorating to know that we can make progress. And it also shows us how far we have to go. Any other questions? Comments, observations? I think this has been a really outstanding event. Questions, comments, concerns, disagreements? Well, hearing none, I wish everybody a good evening, much success in job hunting and hiring.
This has been a really great, informative webinar. I'm Nazreen with Bold Blind Beauty. Thank you so much to you, Jason, for moderating this amazing webinar today. Great job, great tips, great shared experiences. I also want to thank our panelists, Sylvia Stenson Perez, Jennifer Wenslow, and Yokasta Urina for being here today, giving their insights. And also for everybody here that's coming into this live webinar, thank you for joining, registering, and being here live with us. Everybody who's registered is going to get a free resource from self-assessment exercise that we put together. It'll really help you guys. You want to sort of do that yearly self-assessment on yourself. And there's some resource links in there as well for you guys. So thank you everybody for participating today. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And I just want to remind everybody, use those resources and do the homework. There's no shortcuts. No get rich quick schemes here. And employers know when you've done your homework, because it shows on your resume and when you go in for interviews. And if you do your homework here, it makes everything else easier. It's the foundation for everything else.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.